Raise your voices, raise your glass high. Welcome to the Drink O'Clock Podcast. Let's dive. Oh, grab an old fashioned and join the fray. Raise your spirits, let the music play. From the corner pub to the dance hall floor. Drink O'Clock Podcast, we're ready for more.
We are live. Woo! It is. I'm ready for the weekend. I got to tell you, Deborah. I am so ready for the weekend. Welcome to the Drink O'Clock Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Valincius. I have the pleasure of having with me Deborah Heiser. Now, Deborah, you're an applied developmental psychologist. Now, you specialize in midlife and aging. You're the founder CEO of the Mentor Project, and you're also the author. Newly author, right? That's not too old, right? Of The Mentor Edge. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
You know, like I said before we hit record, I'm just happy that nothing went wrong.
I know, right?
I'm not used to this. It's throwing me off. Normally, I'm like, all right, go on, Mike. Try Edge, try Chrome. You know, I'm like, I have an IT degree, not that I use it. You know, because it's
cool.
not what I do.
That comes in handy.
Sometimes it helps, especially when your parents are like, my Wi-Fi is not working. And you're like, unplug it, plug it back in. You know, like, oh my God, you're a genius. I'm really not, Mom. Thank you. I appreciate it. But look, you have a really, really full background of education and stuff. And I'm a huge fan of the psychology field. It's what I wanted to do with my life when I was in college. It's actually where I met my fiance of 13 years, was in adolescent psychology class. So I want to start with, talk a little bit about, your early years and, what ended up getting you into psychology, and maybe talk a little bit about what ended up getting you into that splice of the psychology pie, the aging and I just lost my train of thought. The aging and midlife.
Sure. So I did not come, out as a kid saying, when somebody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, a psychologist or specializing in aging. That was, not even in my vernacular until I was in my early 20s. I didn't really have an idea what a psychologist did. And what didn't happen until I went to visit my grandmother, who I visited all the time. And she was the super fun grandma, the kind that always wore fashionable clothing and was fun. And I went down to visit her, and she wasn't fun. And she was kind of like not put together. She was grouchy. She was completely not herself. So
yeah,
when I went down there, I asked someone at her independent living facility where she lived what was wrong with her. And they said, don't worry, we're going to fix her. And I was like, what do you mean you're going to fix her? And they said, well, she's taking a medication for her COPD. She had a lung issue. And she's going to be fine. She's just depressed. That's it. She'll be fine in the next time you visit her. I didn't believe them, but the next time I went to visit, she was better. She was amazing. She was back to herself. So I said, I want to be a grandma fixer. That's what I want to do. So tell me more about what this is. How do I do it? So I switched my degree to psychology and took the long haul to finish my undergrad degree and got a degree in psychology. And then I knew I wanted to work with aging, which in the 90s nobody was doing. It was, the wild west of it. I had a hard time finding a university to, look for a PhD program that had an aging anybody. So I was like calling people and I was like, hi, would you mind taking me on as a student if I were to work in aging? And I found a school, Fordham University, that said, one of the professors said, I'll take you on. And so that's how I ended up going into the field. And it was a very roundabout way. And I've never really looked back. I really enjoy it.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, look, I work in I work in Medicare. on the insurance side, and I deal with the elderly all the time. And both insurance agents who are 65 plus and their clients. I have clients, probably 200-300 clients that are, some have passed, which messes with you a little bit
Yeah.
as you're in the business. I've been doing this for almost 10 years, but it's a highly and you know what? It's weird. I think, and I try to tell my dad this all the time. I know he's going to listen to this. Dad, because he's 62. I try to tell him, like, you're not old, dude. 62 is like the new 45. You know, old to me now, just being in this world, is like 75 to 80, because you tend to have two different types of 75 to 80-year-old. You have the heavily active 75-year-old that's out doing ballroom dancing,
Yeah.
and they're walking and they have friends and they go out, and then you have the 75 to 80-year-old that didn't take care of themselves and they're struggling with
Yeah.
their life, in terms of their health, because a lot of times it's a rapid decline, right? So I try to tell him, like, you got so much life left. I beat my body up when I was younger. I'm like, Dad, plenty of people have done that. You can always take care of yourself. Doesn't matter how old you are. Just get your shit together. But what's your thoughts on that? What's the elderly to you?
So when I was younger, the elderly to me were, things that went wrong, right? Like depression. I thought, well, oh my gosh, you're older. That's a big thing. You have to really look at that. So
Yeah.
I went out and started researching, and I was looking at aging as everything no one wants to have or get. Alzheimer's disease, frailty, depression, all kinds of things that no one ever wanted to experience. And it shifted for me when I went to a dinner party and somebody said to me, "What are you doing? What do we have to look forward to? Why bother doing what you're doing? Because you're just putting a band-aid on horrible things that, we're not looking forward to." And I had to really think to myself, well, what do we have to look forward to? And that's when I shifted. So I once, thought of aging as strictly a decline, a physical decline that would have your emotions following along with that. And I've since shifted to seeing what's really there, which is that we do have a physical decline. That's inevitable. But our emotions are the opposite. They go up and they never go down. So I look at aging as something that is really, how do we feel, and are we having an emotionally good journey? And that's really what I'm looking at now as that. So when you talked about the two kinds of 75-year-olds, I
Yeah.
really want to know, how are you living your life? Are you enjoying your life? Are you getting fulfillment out of it? And a lot of people can be, they may not be as physically fit as somebody else, but they might be just as happy.
That's true. And there's a lot of different stuff. Like, you go through these stages in life, right? You got your kid, and then your 20s, which you're still a kid, and your 20s, you're discovering yourself. And to me, I'm in my late 30s. 30s, you're discovering yourself too.
Mhm.
I feel like that's still a discovery phase. And then, that's, you really start to think about life in your late 30s, and then you start to really think about it in your 40s. And, kind of how you take care of yourself in that range is really going to dictate at least your physical health. But there's a lot of stuff that you don't think about, I think, when you're younger, that when you're 60, like we don't have kids, right? I don't think we will. So, we say to ourselves, okay, well, who's going to take care of us when we're older if we need that, right? And it's either me or her taking care of one of us, right? And you have to think about that. And then you have people, my dad's, like I say, 62, but his wife passed away last January, right? So now he doesn't have a significant other, and they were together for 20 years. And you have to think about, for the longest time, you think about, okay, I have this person with me and we're going to die together. And then what happens if that isn't, obviously life is life. You can never plan. It's just going to be happy that you wake up and it's a new day, right?
Yeah.
So, it's planning. You're never going to be able to plan for some of that stuff. So that happiness angle that you said is true, because, you could have this person that's, in such good spirits, and then what if their daughter dies, or their significant other, and then that just throws a whole spiral into that emotional side of things, right?
Well, there's a lot there to unpack. I think that, yeah, once you,
I was spewing a little bit. Sorry.
that's good. It's all good. This makes for good discussion. So you started by talking about how you're sort of discovering yourself when you're in your 20s and 30s. And that is true. You're in the identity phase of life. You're supposed to be saying, I want all of these experiences and I want to do everything I'm going to do, take in all kinds of information, fill up my cup with as much expertise and wisdom and values and culture and all the things that matter to me. You're figuring that out. And once you hit about 40 is when you start to say, some of those things don't matter as much to me. Some of those superficial friends don't matter as much to me. I'm going to slough off some of those things. Some of those activities don't mean as much to me. Maybe I'll even say that I don't feel as connected to some of the culture or religion or whatever I had. Or maybe I'm going to ramp it up, whatever the deal is. By 40, you're kind of seeing, I think I know where I am. And in that stage, we're starting to say, what is the meaning in my life? Now, a lot of people think, if I don't have kids, I'm not going to have somebody to take care of me. But we really shouldn't be looking at kids as future caregivers because not all of them are good at it. Not all of them want to do it. So,
True.
we have to really look at, in our midlife, what is it that we want to do for ourselves? Not just physically in terms of saying, I want to, do X, Y, or Z with my life, but how do I feel about my life? So I always tell my students, I'm in my 50s. You can all outrun me. I wear reading glasses now, but I'm happier than you because I already know where I am. I've figured myself out and I'm content and I'm happy. And most people, when they hit that stage in life, that midlife stage, is where they're starting to think about, well, what is it that I want to make my footprint? How do I want that to look? Do I want that to be deeper? In what way? Who am I going to give back to? And you can have children and say, I want to leave my values or whatever to my children or my culture or whatever it is that I'm going to leave to that next generation. But it doesn't have to be children. It could be anyone. I run a mentoring program and people are giving back to the next generation and it's not their children. So
Yeah.
it's really something that when we think of, can you suffer from depression? Can you have things if someone passes away or you have a life event? Yes, you can. But you should also expect that that isn't your permanent way of being. Just like it wasn't for my grandmother. It was a 3-month thing. We should expect that if we have a tragedy in our life or something like that, that we can get back on to the journey, the emotional journey we were set out on before. So our emotions and our physical journey aren't always the same. I could be going down physically, but going up emotionally. There could be a blip in there, but I still should be expecting to go up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you totally. Now, you did a lot of different things with dementia. So I wanted to kind of start with that a little bit because I know at this point it's one of those things where I think almost everybody knows somebody or that's familiar with it. So could you do me a favor? I have a lot of younger listeners who probably aren't thinking about them losing part of their minds when they get older. Can you explain what dementia is? How does it kind of differ from someone's normal aging, and maybe even tell us the difference between, because I know that people get dementia and Alzheimer's confused or they correlate them together. So could you kind of break that down for us?
It's okay to do that. Dementia is sort of an umbrella, and within that is an Alzheimer's disease. So it's really when you start to lose your memory. That's really, I'll just say it as simple as that. Is it normal? No. Is it something we should expect? No. When we first found out about Alzheimer's disease, and then, it was really talked about in the 90s and people were in a panic about it. It reminded me of the 70s when there was a panic about cancer and people thought you could catch cancer. And, since then, there's been a lot of progress in cancer research. Well, Alzheimer's disease and other dementias have had so many amazing areas of progress that they've been able to look at that can be very useful and helpful so that people don't have to expect or worry about Alzheimer's disease or dementia the same way that people were because they just didn't know who was going to get it or suffer from it. But we do know, even if you start to have symptoms, that there are medications that people can take now that they really didn't have. And when they did have them, they had a lot of side effects and things like that. There's a lot more that people can do. I will say that having a healthy lifestyle is something that is a benefit to our brains. We do know that exercise is good for our brains, that healthy diet is good for our brains. So those things that we already know are
You
good
can
for
say
us.
it. You could say it. Lack of alcohol. Okay, lack of alcohol helps. I'll tell you this before you go into it. I know this looks like it's a big drink. There's no booze in here. I've gotten better. We don't drink during the week ever, and that includes my podcast. It's something that in my late 30s, I'm like, well, it was the wifey's idea, and I went along with it, and I said that's a great idea. I think we should do it. So, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I know this is the Drink O'Clock podcast. Sometimes I'll have a drink. It depends, but in most cases, this is a sober show for me. And it turns out for better interviews because I think by the end, it's not always the greatest. But go ahead. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, just that healthy lifestyle is most important. We did not know that. We thought that it was something that, there are genetic factors with it, but we really didn't know a lot. So it was frightening for everyone. Everyone was thinking, am I next? Is that what I have to look forward to? But I would say, do not expect that as something that you have to look forward to. Keeping your vascular system healthy is important. But I also think really go to your doctor regularly because your overall health is very important. That dementia is not the only thing that people are afraid of. Some of the things that we really should be concerned with are our hearts, not getting a stroke, making sure that we have other things in our lives that really help us to take care of ourselves. So we have a lot of things that are tied to just taking good care of ourselves and getting regular doctor visits.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, especially for you men, you older men out there. Okay, go to the damn doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say that all the time. We men, we're stubborn. We're stubborn. I'm still stubborn, and I know when I need to go to the doctor. I'm like, all right, I should go. And then before you know it, it's a month out, and I'm like, all right, I should probably make the appointment. And then it's 2 weeks, and then I finally make the appointment. So I do think that's 100% true, and it's weird. I deal with a lot. Every person I deal with, almost all of them, are on some sort of statin that's used for blood pressure, and it's kind of crazy because they've linked there's been some research out there that's linked blood pressure medicines with onset Alzheimer's. Like they are a determining factor. And I don't know if we don't know if that's obviously a fact from just because people's blood pressure was high and or low and it's caused, it started that or whatever, but there's been a link to that. I don't know if you heard that or you've seen stuff about that.
I've heard that there are links with a lot of different, not a lot, but several different things. I want to see the research really come out and people say, here's what we know definitively because do take your blood pressure medicine. You don't want to die of a heart attack, right? Do take, if you need to take cholesterol meds, take them because you don't want to have a stroke. These are the sorts of things that we're so fortunate that we have now. We're living longer and longer and longer because of new medications, new things that we can add to our lifestyles. But don't rely on meds to get you through everything because, again, a healthy lifestyle is really important. And you might be able to reduce some of those meds that you take for those things if you have a healthy lifestyle. Which, look, does it suck for me to say that? And people are going to be like, yeah, whatever. It's the same, that I have with exercising and diet, just like everybody else. It's not fun and easy. But the truth of the matter is that if we take care of ourselves, those meds, those risks do lower.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about aging?
People think, and I was right here in this camp, that they think that life is scary because we think of life as a physical journey. And most of us think of life as an inverted V. So steep incline early on and then a slow, steady decline. And when we think of that, we think our emotions are attached to that. That as we decline, we're going to feel terrible and not be able to do much as time goes on, and that we'll also feel bad. I can tell you though, I wear reading glasses now. I'm in my 50s. I really don't mind. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. These things happen so slowly over time that it isn't, and truly, honestly, I'm not in a foot race with anybody. I don't worry that I can't run as fast. So we think that the loss that we have is going to be noticeable, but it's not. And the other thing is, people think that we will be unhappy as we get older, that we'll feel sad, we'll be feeling like a loss all the time and impending doom. And we don't feel that way. So I'm not unusual in feeling like I have so many opportunities ahead of me. And now I have the bandwidth to go do them all. I can start a company, I can write a book, I can do whatever I want. The doors have opened up because I have the bandwidth now that we don't have when we're younger and we can run fast. So our lifespan, even for those, when I talk about them, who are late in life and maybe in a wheelchair, can't breathe well, maybe they're on oxygen, I'll say, why are you happy? How is that? And they'll say, because I can still do the things that I really enjoy. I can go on my computer, I can read and write, I can see my grandchildren, I can go out to lunch, I can visit with my friends. Those are the things that matter to us in the end, are, being able to connect with others and feel like we have purpose in our everyday. And we can still have that.
Yeah, I mean, look, dementia, Alzheimer's, the mental related illnesses. It's the one. It's like one of my top 3 fears. I want to do everything I can. That and blindness. Those 2 things freak me out. And I'm sure that freaks most people out,
Yeah,
right?
most people aren't looking forward to those things.
Pass me a wheelchair any day of the week if it means I can still remember everything. That's like that one thing that I think as a human, all you have at some point, right, are your memories. Family, friends, experiences. So that's one of those illnesses. It's tough to deal with, and it's tough to watch people deal with. My grandmom eventually died from dementia, and
It is tough.
She was kind of like your grandma, right? She always went and got her hair. She was very close with my mom. My mom still, is tore up about it. But, they would go get their hair done together and their nails. And, she would always call 2 or 3 times a day to talk to my mom. And it was one of those things, you take for granted, I think, sometimes, when you're younger. What do you think our understanding of the age-related mental health, how do you think that's evolved over the years? I know you mentioned the 90s, and I mean, we don't want to talk about what they did to mental patients back in like the 50s and 60s, but let's talk about like how it's evolved from, we'll say, like, 80s, 90s to now, right?
If we think of, mental health with the elderly, it was always expected, and still is to a degree, that older people will be in pain, that they'll be depressed, that they'll be anxious, and that they'll be lonely, and that they'll be sick. So I used to work in a nursing home, and I remember I walked in and I said to myself, wow, these people look a little depressed. And I was a graduate student, so I was on my externship. And everybody was saying to me, no, they're not depressed. I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, okay, you're the expert, not me. So I kept going back. And then I said to myself a couple of weeks later, okay, they look depressed. And so I said, can I do a little project where I can just ask, 15 questionnaire to people to see, how they're feeling. And they were like, knock yourself out. So I did it, and it turned out that in this little group of people that I tested, that they came out as, screening positive for depression. And I said, oh, wow. So this is looking like they're coming out screening positive for depression. That didn't mean they were diagnosed. And so I said, can I do a full study on this? Can I do my dissertation on this? So it turned out I did my dissertation on this, and the way that they were assessing for depression in the nursing homes was that they had two questions. One is the person taking medication for depression, and two was, have you seen the person crying? So, yeah,
That's it.
yeah, that was
That
it.
is
That was it.
crazy.
So when I walked in and said everyone looks depressed, they were like, they're not. And so because
Yeah, we asked them the two questions.
right.
They're fine.
Exactly. So when I did my test, it came out that people screened positively at a really high rate. And it didn't mean that they were depressed. There's something called, an adjustment disorder. If you can imagine people that go to college or they have any kind of new transition, there's a period of adjustment. A person can seem depressed or they can seem out of it. That happens when you start a new job, any new thing that can happen. And the same with when you go to a nursing home. But the biggest thing I found from that was that not only did the study that I did, it changed how they had to assess for depression in the nursing homes, because I was able to find that there was an easier way to do it and you had to do it a little bit differently than they were. But people expected depression. So they weren't saying, oh, this is an issue that we need to address. They expected that that's how they should be. So it wasn't alarming to them when they would come in and see people looking depressed. So the same with pain. If someone was in pain, they'd be like, well, of course they're in pain. The same thing with, any kind of issue that they were having. If it was negative, they expected it because they were old. That is where we had to make the flip, and say, no, 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 we should not expect that. We should never expect that. That is not
Yeah.
related to age. That was just our own biases and expectations of it. And then when I looked at the news and what was happening in the media in like the 2010s, 2015, right around there, I was seeing that if you Googled older adult, all they had were articles on frailty, getting scammed, somebody getting, in their wheelchair, getting robbed, all of these things that were making us feel like, oh my gosh, we better worry about ourselves and our older relatives because doom and gloom is ahead of you. So
Yeah.
a lot of it is a mindset in how we think about it and what our expectations are.
Yeah, I mean, look, even today, me and my fiance talk about it a lot. It's like, stay away from the news.
Yeah.
like honestly, you should really just stay away from it, because a lot of the news, depending on which station you watch, right? I mean, we had discussed, the politics of things can get crazy with people, right? Even the news you watch, depending on what station you watch, it could be totally different views and things like that, and it could really mess with you if that's all you're consuming,
Yeah.
as a person. So it's kind of wild, how that works. Now, you talked a little bit about your grandmom and these people you did your dissertation on. How did your dissertation turn out, by the way?
Well, the dissertation turned out really well because it ended up making a difference. They had to change how they assessed for depression in nursing homes because of that. That made a
Wow.
change because no one was looking at depression as an issue. Depression was just something you expected to be there. So I found that to be great. It got published in a peer-reviewed journal. It ended up becoming a big pivotal thing that was a change in it. And if you go in and you look around at places, like I go to where my mother-in-law lives, she lives in an assisted living facility. They're not depressed. They're walking around and they're happy. They're doing things. That's what we should expect. And people will say, oh, well, it's because the place is nice. No, it's because that's what you should expect. And she's going to be 99 in June. And
Wow.
so this is what we really need to, yes, don't listen to the news. But if you're going to listen to the news or watch television, realize that right now, I always think actions speak louder than words. And we are electing, no matter what your political background is, people who are octogenarians or near octogenarians and over. And that says something about us believing that people have the ability to do things when they're older. If you look at a lot of positions that are being held, it's by older people. And that's not just here, that's globally. And if you look at television shows, they're starting to make a change. Like I think there's a show, Grace and Frankie, that shows older women who live on, who are living independently, and they're starting to have more female leads who are older and things like that. We're starting to see some good positive changes happening. So even if people are saying negative things about aging, I'm seeing more positive things about aging out there.
Yeah, and I mean, look, even in my world, ever since I started, the insurance companies obviously want seniors to be healthy because it saves them money. So a lot of the things that they've implemented, even is since COVID and stuff. I mean, a lot of these Medicare plans, I mean, they have stuff built in to get watches. So
Yeah.
you could track your
One,
steps
one,
and
two.
your heart rate, and they're getting pretty crazy with some of that technology too. And I hope they continue to work on that bio style technology
Yeah.
because I think that will be and I've talked about this before, and I get into it when I talk about medicals because I just deal with it a lot. But it's cool to see the industry, the healthcare industry, go from more of like a reactive to a proactive
Mm-hmm.
approach, right? So instead of saying, "Oh, you got cancer, let's treat it," it's okay. You don't have cancer, but your dad had cancer and you smoked. Let's take a look at some of the early signs. Do you have it? No. Well, let's try to prevent it, right?
Yeah.
And they're doing a lot of that with some of this technology, and I think that's cool because you have seniors that get these watches and these cool things, and I think we're hitting that strand of senior that is a lot more comfortable with
Yeah.
technology now than even 5-10 years ago.
It's funny because you say that. And my mother-in-law used to live with me, and she's 98, turning 99 soon. And we used to have her friends over for dinner when she lived with us. And one of them came in, and it was, I don't know, about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. And she came in at her friend, and she was like talking on her phone, which was on her wrist. And she's the same age as my mother-in-law. And I thought, how cool is that she has better technology than I have? And so, like, I didn't have an Apple Watch, but she did. And she was talking to her daughter on her wrist, doing everything she needed to do. And I thought, wow, we've come a long way, because here I am at a dinner table, and she's talking on her phone on her wrist without missing a beat while she's eating her salad. I thought that was kind of neat.
That's awesome. And you got to love seeing it too,
Yeah.
because, at the end of the day, these devices can be annoying, right? Because, well, I still grew up in a time when we had privacy as people,
Yeah.
which you don't have anymore, because of the devices. But it's great because you do get to stay connected.
Yeah.
If someone wants to, if you're retiring and you don't want to stay in cold ass Philadelphia like I am, you could go down and be a snowbird and live in lived in the Keys in Florida,
Yeah.
or go to Arizona, but it doesn't mean you still can't be connected with people, which is it's cool, especially in when you have someone that's aging and they just want a change. Sometimes there's you have family that's anchoring you, but maybe your heart's calling for something else. Maybe you want to go snowboard, or maybe you want to go surfing, and you can do that, right? When you
Oh,
retire. I mean, you can do it whenever, but you have a lot more time when you
we
have
shouldn't
the
expect
retire
to give
badge on.
those things up as we age. We really shouldn't. We should be expecting that if you surfed when you were young, you'll be surfing when you're older. If you like to travel when you're young, you're going to like to travel when you're older. That those don't go away. It's not like you hit midlife and you're like, ooh, I'm just going to sit on my chair and do nothing. We should really expect to have hobbies. So start your hobbies early, because a lot of people underestimate the importance of that, because that also gives you a good connection base. So you mentioned connection, and there are all these studies that show that if you're connected, it's a buffer for loneliness. And they have all of these social isolation and social prescribing things that are being done nowadays, because they're trying to make sure that seniors in particular are connected, so that they aren't suffering from loneliness, which is a risk factor for depression and other things. So um, we should really be expecting that we connect with others. These are great devices, our watches, but
Oh yeah.
also staying involved in all of our hobbies that we've started, where you get to meet with people and feel like a meaningful connection. Like you mentioned, you and your wife said, "Oh, who's going to take care of me when I'm older?" Well, when you have a community, your community comes out for you. And that's who takes care of you. I have an uncle who lives by himself, and when he needs to get his mail, the neighbor kids go get it. He can't go out, he's not as able to do things. His community comes out for him. And that's what we should expect. We should think that people will be there for us.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about this a little bit, but hit us with what are some early signs of depression or cognitive decline that people should be aware of, whether that's either for themselves or maybe their loved ones?
I'll tell you some risk factors for depression that most people don't know about. And that is, if you have a stroke, you're 50% more likely to suffer from depression. If you have a heart attack or have heart issues, you're 50% more likely to suffer from depression. If you like a medication, you can be more likely, like my grandmother was, to suffer from depression. So if you know somebody who suffered from a heart attack or has been diagnosed with a heart issue, and you start to see that they are behaving differently, like I noticed with my grandmother, she was like, I don't want to get up. I don't want to do the things that I did. That was noticeable, not just to me, but to everyone around her. So if a person suffers from cancer, you should expect to be looking for signs and symptoms that are different from their usual behavior, because that might be an indicator that they might be suffering from depression. So should you just expect that to pop out of nowhere? No. But there are things that can be in our lives that you should say, these are the times I'm going to really look for things that might be standing out to me. And in terms of Alzheimer's disease, the one thing I would say is a really good way to keep on top of that is a good annual physical, because your doctor is measuring your memory. They give you tests, and especially seeing a geriatrician is important, because they will be measuring not just your eyesight. If you go for a full physical every year, they're going to measure your hearing. They're going to measure your eyesight. They're going to measure all kinds of things like that. And we do know that hearing loss as you get older that is not, dealt with a hearing aid, you're at risk for memory loss. That's
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So these sorts of things are very important. A lot of people put a lot of stuff off, and they say, I'll do it later, and they never do it. And I'm saying, it doesn't matter how old you are, start now. Go do it, because that is where you're going to have your baseline, and somebody can look at that year after year and see how you are doing. And if there is a loss, they'll be able to say, ooh, we should look into this. And you can have it looked into early. If it's depression, you can fix it, right? And if it's Alzheimer's disease or dementia, you can get on a medication, or you can talk to your doctor about ways to deal with it. So these are some of the things. It doesn't mean that you have to live a life of rapid, immediate decline. There are things people can do nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, that's not. I mean, look, I saw my eye doctor, and I see him every year, and this was the first year in many years that I didn't have a decline in my eyesight. It was exactly the same. And I got to tell you, as someone that's 38, I got to clap my hands and be happy, because I'm like, damn, I got to change my contacts again. And nope, exactly the same. And I'm like, thank God.
That's amazing. Keep doing
these are the
what
things
you're
you get
doing.
excited about when you get older, people. If you're listening,
exactly.
Your eyesight doesn't get worse. It stays the same. Well, let's all right. We hit the aging stuff, which I really wanted to talk about. Let's go to the other side of things, in terms of the mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to everybody, what do you mean by mentorship? What is that?
So mentorship is something that I have said before, that I think that term is so loosely used right now that a lot of people are unsure what the meaning is. So people don't engage in it as much, or they don't acknowledge when they're engaged in it. So mentorship really has 5 key components to it. And that is that it has to be generative. It comes from the mentor, right? The mentor is the one that has all of the information. And when we hit midlife, we hit a stage called generativity. It's where we're built to want to give back. So first thing is, you need somebody who wants to give back. Like, you have a podcast, you're saying, I'd like to give back wisdom to other people. Now there has to be somebody, the mentee, who wants that. So if I said to you, hey, I want to mentor you in pickleball, and you don't like pickleball, we don't have a match. That's not mentoring.
Terrible at serving in pickleball.
So
I'm terrible at it. I do need a mentor there.
So, but you have to be aligned in that way with someone to receive and someone to who's giving. And then the next thing is it has to be intrinsically motivated. And what that means is that if I'm getting paid to do it, I'm not mentoring. That's something else. It's coaching, it's advising, it's something else. So that because it's extrinsically motivated. So if you like to do anything like read or you have any kind of hobby, you do it because you love to. You don't do it because you want to get paid for it. So
Yeah, exactly.
we need that there. Next thing is we need a meaningful connection. If you are not meaningfully connected with your mentor, then then you're probably not mentoring. There could be a weaker version of it. Like if you are doing a podcast and giving information out, you may not know who the mentee is, the person receiving it. So it could be that that's a weaker link, but you should have a meaningful connection there, even if it's a one way. Next is that there has to be trust. And this is a big one. This and intrinsic motivator are two of the biggest. So if I'm out and I don't trust someone, I am not going to be a good mentor. If I think that somebody's going to steal my idea and run away with it, that's not my mentee. If I'm a mentee and I think, well, that person, I'm going to tell all of my vulnerabilities and the things that I don't know how to do to, is going to think less of me. Or if I'm at work with them and they're not going to give me a pay raise or a promotion if they find out I don't know how to do it, we're not mentoring. And finally, there has to be a goal. Like it could be as simple as tell me the lay of the land of this place, something very vague and simple. But if you don't have all 5 of those components, you do not have mentoring. And a lot of places don't have that. They have the title mentoring, but it's not actual mentoring.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, and it's weird when you think about it too, because we've had mentorship all throughout human existence, right? Even like as early, like when I think of mentorship, like I think of blacksmiths, right, and their apprentice. That's literally at the end of the day, that was a mentorship, right? That guy had all the knowledge of how to create turn metal into weapons and whatever, and that kid didn't, or that guy didn't.
Yeah.
So, we've had it for a long time. How do you feel the digital age has affected mentorship? Has it helped? Has it
hugely? So mentoring isn't just work, it's also our culture. That's how religion got passed down. That's our family values and our traditions. People want to have, if you feel strongly about values or traditions or your religion or whatever it is, morals, whatever, that's something that people like to say, I'm going to give that back. I want that out in the world. I want it to remain there. So in terms of, if we were to look at mentoring in the digital age, we saw a huge shift once COVID happened. Everyone got on Zoom. Prior to that, we were using like Skype, and it was really like if you
rest in peace.
It was
rest in peace.
Right?
Skype.
It was a big deal to get online with somebody, and everybody's Wi-Fi was crummy. It was like huge. There wasn't much happening that way. Now people can get mentored around the world by people. We can see we've seen a huge boom in podcasting. Those are mentors. You are mentoring. You're giving back knowledge to people. You're giving back something that you feel passionate about to others. That's mentorship. You're doing that not for pay. You're doing that because you want to.
Definitely not.
You want people to be meaningfully connected with you. Is that as strong as being in person? It's kind of like telemedicine, we would rather be in person with somebody, but if you don't have that, take what you can get, right? So these are all forms of it. I'm going to be seeing, I think, much more AI involvement. And I don't know what that's going to look like in the future, but I do write about that in the book, about like how some people have created, a bot that can give out mentorship to a certain group of people based on their expertise and pass on that wisdom in a mentoring kind of a way, that is out there. It's being done now. So we do have all of these new forms that are out there digitally. I'm excited by it personally. I think it connects us even more than we were before.
I love AI. I use AI for many aspects of my life. I do think that there's a detriment, just like, but that's with everything, right? What did they say about the internet when the internet
Yeah.
was created, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, some people thought it would never get big, and look where we are now,
Yeah.
right? We're all interconnected. And then, it was the same thing with social media, right? Social media would never be anything, and look where we're at now with social media. I think AI is kind of that next gradual evolution. I think we need to be careful with it, but I think that there's a lot of what you can do with it that could, we talked a lot about mental acuity, right? Acuity. And I think it could definitely help you there, right? It can alleviate some of those medial tasks that you wouldn't want to do, but could also help. I'm a creative person. It could also help you create base ideas for things.
Yeah.
Right? And I'd imagine as someone that's aging into, look how far we've come in a couple years, right?
Yeah.
3 years since ChatGPT came and hit us in the face. Where are we going to be in 20 years?
I know.
Where are we going to be when I turn 65? Hopefully there's still Social Security, because that would suck. But where are we going to be then? Who knows what type of advancements AI is going to bring to the table. And I do think this is something it could really help with, especially if it gets to a point where it can very much mimic a human. I don't think it's ever going to take the place of a human, but it can very much mimic a human. And if you have someone that's, alone in a home with no friends or family, maybe it could be a companion to a friend to somebody and help them so they don't jump into those depressive states, right?
Yeah, they have now, that I heard about from somebody, interactive, like I don't think it's a book, but it's some kind of an interactive, kind of a fantasy lifestyle that people can have where there are characters and things like that. I don't know where that will go, but I do know that this is all a big help in connecting people now, because we can find ways. If a person is lonely, we don't need a fake person. We can connect them with people in their community, as like UJA in New York is doing with getting social prescribing and connection happening with lonely individuals. It's getting them like face to face. So you can use AI to help find ways in which you can connect people. If someone goes to the doctor and they find out, oh, they're really not connected with others, well, who is there and how can you connect them? I think that our system now that we have with tech is going to be useful for that, so that person can have people dropping food off, that they can be coming over to help them. Maybe they need help cleaning. Maybe they need assistance in other ways that would be useful emotionally for them. Maybe they'd like to, just sit and have coffee with somebody. It helps to get people connected on a human to human level when it's awkward sometimes for a person to try to find that on their own.
Yeah, and it's great for learning too. I know I do a Spanish lesson every day. I've done it every day
That's super
before I
cool.
go to bed for years, and they use AI to help you learn languages, which I thought was pretty cool, because it gets you to, it's more personalized to you,
Yeah.
right? Because I think all too often we talk about this box.
No.
And every human's supposed to fit in this box, and that's not how it is. It's definitely not how it is. Everyone has similarities, but everyone's a unique being. And I think it's cool. I think AI will be used to tailor things like learning a language, because we all learn things differently, and we all absorb things differently. And if you're older or younger, you pick up things fast or slower.
Yep.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit more about the mentorship. What I would like to know is, what type of advice would you give to somebody that's maybe older and, later in life, if they're trying to look for a mentor?
So everyone at every age should say, I need a mentor, right? You don't ever age out of needing a mentor. So what we should really be doing, though, is looking at mentorship as something where we're going to be an expert that somebody else isn't. And we're always going to be somebody who doesn't know something that somebody else knows. So we're always in one of those positions. So you can look right around in your community and you have an opportunity to give back or to get information. So say you say to yourself, I'm older. I want to learn something. I want to get mentorship in something that is completely new to me. Well, there are a lot of places that you can go right in your community that have been around forever. You can go to the Rotary Club. You can go to, your house of worship. You can go to any other specialized organization. Most communities have like a community ed that's there, and you can find someone who's going to help you. It doesn't have to be that you take a class, but you can say, hey, can I pick your brain can I get some advice on something? You can also look to anyone in your family and friend network that you already know about. So these are all places that you can go that are easy, that are free, that are available to you, so you can receive mentorship. You can also go to all those and give mentorship as well. But I always tell people, look to your left and look to your right, because you're looking at somebody who can mentor you. And you're also looking at somebody that you can mentor. So just like everyone who's in tech understands how if you're a hardware engineer, you kind of have to pair up with a software engineer at some point. And those are
Yeah.
two people who are able to mentor each other laterally. Neither is the boss. Neither one is hierarchically higher than the other. And most of our interactions in life are lateral in that way. So, our country was founded on a bunch of lateral mentors that came together. Nobody was the boss, and they founded the country. All of the big tech revolution was lateral. So if you're older, this is something that we're really well versed in, is getting lateral mentorship. So don't think you have to look to somebody older than you. Think you have to look at somebody who has a different area of knowledge than you.
I like that different life perspective.
Yeah.
That's good. I
Yeah.
like that. And I think more people need to do that. I don't think we do it enough, for sure.
And
And I'm saying that from my perspective, for sure.
Oh, for sure. And most of us think that it has to be something that is going to be like, now I'm going to go do this new activity. But I'll tell you, a lot of the stuff that's really important to us is our culture. So I have every Thanksgiving my grandmother's handwritten recipe cards with her full Thanksgiving dinner on it. And that is a trend. I think that is from her mother. So it would really have come from my great grandmother. I'm going to,
Wow.
now, if I don't make that full meal, everyone is like, what? And there's even stuff that people don't like in it. But I have to make it all because it feels like that holiday. Now, I'll be
Yeah.
passing that on to the next generation. It may not be my kids. It might be like a cousin's kids, or it's going to get passed on. Because you never know, somebody might take on somebody else's traditions when they pair up with someone. But the main thing is it's been passed down generation to generation. If you walk into your family, you can feel and understand your values that you have that matter to you. Now, that is something that you can mentor somebody else in. It does not have to be a direct relative, but you can mentor people in those sorts of things that are important to you, or receive mentorship from somebody else in those kinds of things, which is religion, culture, value, all of those things that are sort of abstract and that are out there living, but in the world, but without it, we feel completely lost.
Yeah, see, I'm a giver. I got to get better with asking. I love to give. I'll have people on this podcast and they'll ask me questions about the software I use and the settings and how I market and all this. And I'll just give. But for me, I'm one of those people, I don't tend to ask. I got to get better with that.
Here's how you can ask that's a little easier. You can say, can you give me some advice on this? It's much different than asking if you're saying, can I pick your brain about this? You're an expert in this. Can I ask you a few questions about that? Then it doesn't feel like you are a taker. That's
Yeah.
allowing the other person to be a giver. Because this is the case with me and so many other people. I don't know if it is for you, but if somebody asks me for my advice, I'm like, you want my advice? Really? I feel so good. And
Yeah,
I'm willing to give
fluff.
because
Flush
I
your
feel
ego a little
great then. What? You value me? Excellent. So if
Yeah.
you're asking somebody for that, you're actually giving them a gift because they get to feel like they matter.
I like that. That's a good way to look at it. Let's talk about your book. You wrote a book, The Mentorship Edge. Tell us a little bit about it. And, what was that writing process like for you?
So the writing process came really easily to me because I've been doing this forever, right? So that was not hard. Um, but I can't, the book is really there to say, here's what mentoring is and here's what it isn't. And I really wanted to get that out there to say, here's how coaching is different. Here's how advising is different. Here's how networking is different. Here's how you can use them all together. It also really was there to show how we have hierarchical mentoring and a bunch of examples of people who've engaged in that and how that looks, and lateral mentoring and how that looks in the real world. So it's taking a lot of stories from real people and how those have played out with regard to mentoring. And it's really looking at mentorship from the mentor's perspective. As you know, that we can see it, the mentee's perspective in it as well, but mostly the mentor's perspective. So the writing for me was really exciting and fun because I got to talk to a lot of really cool people, from astronauts to grandmas, and how it was to
That's cool.
mentor and hear their stories. And there were enough differences in all of them that it was so fun to hear it because it was relatable to, my everyday life, and to others when they read it too. So it was really a pleasure.
That's awesome. That's cool. I don't even know what I would ask. And there's so many things that I like. I've been doing this for 3 years, but there's still so many types of people that I haven't had on that I'm like chomping at the bit to get on. I love interviewing people like yourself with psychology because I share that love. And you're an author, and authors are fun to interview just in general because their mind tends to work a little differently than other people. But it's there's so many things out there in the world that are left that I can still do. And for me, that's just excites me. Anytime I get a new person that they give me the tidbit about themselves, I'm like, ooh, let's go. Can't wait. Let's do it. Well, what do you want to do? What do you want to talk? Let's get it going. Let's talk a little bit about your the mentor project.
Sure.
Can you tell us what that is
Yes.
and how you're involved with that?
So the Mentor Project came around organically. I was looking at all sorts of mentors because I wanted to see if this whole generativity thing was real. This was a theory that had been really well researched, but nobody was really talking about what it looked like for people who were engaged in it. So I was talking to mentors and asking them about it, and they were saying, I love to mentor, but I have such a hard time finding mentees. And so a couple of us, just a handful of us, started trying to get people in front of kids in schools to see what it would look like and see how that would be. And we happened to then say, ooh, we're getting enough excitement about this from ourselves. And the other people seem to like it, the kids in the schools. Let's make this a nonprofit. And we were told there was never going to be anything other than the handful of us that would be doing this because no one would ever want to give back who's a top 1% in their field. They're too busy. They have too much going on. This is, they're not going to want to give their time to kids in schools. And we went from 10 to 60 to 80 to 100 within a year. And
Wow.
it showed that people want to give back. They just didn't know where or how. And so we have been super lucky because we were able to give away $3 million of mentorship hours last year alone. And that was in 5 countries. So, our mentors are really out there changing the lives of students everywhere while at the same time changing their lives because they feel every time you impact somebody, it's like you're impacting yourself. You enter that journey with that person, and
Yeah.
every little hurdle that they jump over and every achievement they have, it's yours too. So it's just really an amazing experience for everybody. And we're hoping to double it this year.
That's cool. Hey, look, if you ever need a podcaster, you let me know.
I
I'd be
will.
happy to mentor some future podcasters. Let's end with this, okay? I always, especially a psychologist, I'm interested to what your answer would be here. What's one piece of advice or a life lesson that stuck with you throughout your career? Bestow upon us some knowledge.
When I was 5, my grandfather used to take me on rides with him around town. And I lived in Des Moines, Iowa. And he'd bring me in this big, giant Cadillac convertible. And I'd sit in the front seat and he would tell me stories about everybody we passed. And I didn't understand what that meant. He'd be like, hey, Mary over there, she had a hard day, you know, but she put her kids through college. And see that guy over on the bench, his wife just chewed him out because he didn't take in the dry cleaning on time. And he said to me, every person has a story. You can never look at a person and know what their story is, but you need to know that everyone has a story. And I'm a psychologist now. I need to know everybody's story. That was the
Foreshadowing? A little foreshadowing there?
maybe, but that was impactful to me, that those bits of wisdom that still stick with me now. I remember his stories, and I remember him telling me how important it is to know what a person's story is, that you can't just, you know, judge a person without finding out what their story is. So that stuck with me. That was the wisdom that I still use today.
That is an excellent life lesson. It's something especially myself, I've been trying to get better with. Like, you know, that person that cuts you off in traffic and gives you the finger, you know, that type of person where you're going to get pissed off. Maybe they had a bad day. You know, I'm trying to get better with that. And I think
we all are trying to get better with that one.
I think we as a species could probably benefit from trying to think on the other side of that coin. And I think that could cause a lot less conflicts, you know, as we get older. Right?
True. Very true.
Look, Deborah, it was fantastic having you on. It was a great conversation. Can you tell everybody where they can find all of your content and all of your things? I know your book's on Amazon and stuff. So can you tell us where we can get all that stuff?
Sure. Well, you can find out about the mentoring at mentorproject.org. It's free for students. So just click Become a Mentee button if that's interesting to you. If you can find me, I write for Psychology Today. I have a Substack called The Right Side of 40. And I can be found on LinkedIn. And I also have my own website called deborahheiser.com.
Oh, very unique. I like it.
I know, I'm so creative.
Listen, you can find my podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's Drink O'Clock, anywhere you listen. And also on YouTube, if you like watching videos, social media, it's Drink O'Clock Pod on most socials. So it's great having you on. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to hang out with me. And let's do this again soon.
This was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. It was great to meet you.
Thank you. You as well. Have a great day.
You too.
On a stormy night where legends unfold, there's a podcast that's breaking the mold. Raise your voices, raise your glass high. Welcome to the Drink O'Clock podcast. Let's dive. Oh, grab an old fashioned and join the flame. Raise your spirits, let the music play. From the corner pub to the dance hall floor. Drink O'Clock podcast, we're ready for more. We're ready for more. With a mix of folklore and rebel cheer here, we'll guide you through tales of whiskey and beer. From Irish shores to lands afar, grab your friends, it's time to raise the bar.